I think the thing that sets Harris apart is a sort of showiness to it, too. It's not just... Because later, if we look at her when she was Attorney General, then, she's the top cop for the whole state of California, and she just did a lot of things like just sort of performatively going after big banks or big tech or Backpage, the classified advertising site, and just all these different things that she went after almost just to get her name in the headlines. And I think that's what makes her sort of especially bad and dangerous, is that she was very good at getting media attention, but also it seems like a lot of the things she decided to do as a prosecutor or as Attorney General were specifically just to like get her name out there rather than actually help with issues. Whereas even though some prosecutors may be bad, they don't seem to have quite that sort of need for attention, or I guess political, she had higher ambitions and was willing to do whatever it took to get her name out there in order to do that.
Yeah, she does seem to have a fairly fluid perception of her own record too.
Yes.
That's a nice way of saying it. But when she responded to Tulsi Gabbard, and I, having read everything about her since then, I think Tulsi Gabbard, in a very clinical way
and succinct and
perfectly
it was
characterized her entire record, but her response was nonsensical.
Yeah, and she really just, the way she handled it was just to dismiss her. She sort of laughed at it. She sort of said, oh, well, she, alluded to, or she said, Tulsi Gabbard met with Assad. Her campaign or communications manager on Twitter was going on about how, sort of implying that Tulsi Gabbard was a Russian plant, like linking to this article about how maybe, Russians loved her and stuff. And it was very much, instead of, at all addressing the issue, she just sort of tried to smear Tulsi. And that's sort of how this is, though. If she was now changed and was like, could account for these changes, right, that would be something different. I mean, I might still not believe it exactly, but at least it'd be a little bit better if she could now say, like, look, I was like this, here's why I've changed, whatever. But instead, she just sort of, tries to pretend that she has always been different than she is saying she is now.
It reminds me of that week when Ted Cruz was pretending to be a libertarian because Rand Paul was trending into polls. And now that she sees, like, and she's on a lot of really useful and important pieces of criminal justice reform legislation.
Yeah.
She's partnered with Rand Paul.
A bail reform thing. Yeah.
So, like, but does she mean it? I don't think so.
There's a lot of her, her favorite thing to say is like, well, I'm really considering thinking about that, or we should really, look into that further. She said, just today there was a thing, or over the weekend, I guess she laughed when someone asked her a question about Trump and said he seems mentally retarded, and she laughed, and then people got mad and said, you shouldn't laugh at someone calling someone retarded, and then she said, well, I didn't hear it. I didn't actually hear that he said that part. And it was the same thing we've seen in debates. She raised her hand when it said, should we abolish private insurance? She raised her hand later when people were like, what? Like, I thought you didn't want to abolish, and it was like polling bad. She's like, oh, no, I didn't quite hear the question. Like, it's just anything to deflect. Someone was like, we should fundraise.
She was raising her hand to see which way the wind was blowing.
Exactly. Like,
on Medicare for All right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.